Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic and we did it! We are at 1,000 subscribers, so thank you guys so much for being here and supporting me. This is amazing. I never thought I would get this far, and as a thank you to you guys, I am releasing 4 of my files for my actual Antweight combat robots. There are some other files I do want to get out there eventually, but at this point in time, I'm not happy enough with the design to release them into the world. They don't perform as well as I want them to for me to actually release them, and they're also pushing the weight limit a little bit on a couple of them, so yeah. But having said that, they're not released now, but they will be released over the next week, unless of course I get them all up somehow before this video goes live. There'll be links in the description to all of those as they go live. We have Absolutely Quackers, my servo-powered duck robot that is a duck hammer. It's not the greatest hammer. It does kind of work as a grabbing robot, but you need to use the version that has prongs out the front, not the version that doesn't have prongs out the front, which is the version I have in front of me right now. Fan favorite Triple Point. Actually, no, this is not Triple Point. This is Microdot, sorry. Yeah, so fan favorite Microdot is getting released, as is its precursor Blind Spot, which is the dustpan, the solid dustpan, because once again, I never managed to get the hinge dustpan working in a way that I was happy with, so I think the actual solid dustpan worked the best out of all of those. And then a little obvious, my angled bar spinner, because this guy is actually getting completely overhauled very soon and getting a brand new version that is going to be even more deadly than this one. Yeah. So those files, like I said, they'll be out either now or in the coming week, and there will be links to all of those on Thingiverse. There will be at least one of those up now anyway. If you go over to Thingiverse, and I think you can follow people on Thingiverse, or at least you can find my page on Thingiverse, and you can keep checking back there. These 4 will be up hopefully by the end of the week. I haven't actually prepped all these files yet, but we will get there very soon. So I got all of you guys out there to ask me some questions, and you guys gave me some really good questions. So let's jump into some of those. I'm just going to do these in no real particular order, and I'm also not going to say people's usernames out loud, because saying internet usernames often gets really complicated really quickly. And the way I've got everything set up here, I actually can't see people's usernames. I will pop them up on the screen though, so you can see who asked what as I go through. So we're going to start with, are you going to build a Melty Brain? I hope so, is the answer to that question. The problem with Melty Brains, and in fact the problem with anything that has 360 degrees of offense, is that they're always complicated to build. A Melty Brain, even though the hardware is quite simple, the actual software is quite difficult. And me being me, I want to do the hardware and software completely from scratch on my own. I don't really want to use OpenMelt, which is a thing out there in the world right now. I would prefer to have all of the knowledge of how the bot works, and I would prefer to know, just for my own peace of mind, that it's going to fail safe and stuff. I mean, I know people use it, and I know that they have it fail safe and all that kind of stuff, but just for me, a Melty Brain is a complicated, dangerous thing, and I want to make, I want to know, A, that I can do it, and B, that when I do it, it's going to be safe. So it will happen, but it's hard. It's very hard to do. So I've been working on one in the background, not in videos, for a little while right now, and it's just kind of on and off work. Where the mood strikes me, I work on the Melty Brain for half a day, and then I leave it alone again. The other problem that this faces, the same thing that ring spinners face, like I said, anything that has 360 degrees of attack around the robot itself, is ricochets. So ricocheting is a massive thing for both Melty Brains and ring spinners, because of course you're going to get hit from anywhere pretty much. Your opponent, if they really feel like it, can chance attacks that will ricochet you into pits and things like that. And there's no real way around this, unless of course you are really good at driving. But of course most people who do Melty Brains and ring spinners and full body spinners and all that kind of stuff are putting a lot more weight and energy into those weapons and not into the drive, which means they can be outdriven and the ricochet can be controlled, as long as, of course, your opponent can tank the hit that you put out. Like I said, there's no real way around this. So when I do work on my Melty Brain, I'm working on it more for the curiosity of the thing and not to actually have successful fights out of it. I'm never expecting a Melty Brain to give me a win in any category. I think that a Melty Brain is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun to drive, but both of the ARC arenas have big pits in them that open up on their own. So a Melty Brain is always going to end up in those pits. It's just the way the fights are going to end from that. It's not going to be able to do enough damage to not end up in a pit at some point. Okay, so on to the next question. How much does it cost to laser cut ant weight bars and beetle weight bars? So the ant weight bar that I've got on a little obvious here, this is a 5mm Hardox blade, and that cost me a couple of bucks to cut over at a place called Action Laser in Perth, which is a really cool company in Australia. They're one of the only companies that stocks and cuts Hardox, which is a big thing when you're trying to get weapon bars cut. If the place doesn't stock the material that you're asking them to cut, they will charge you for the whole sheet. So you need to find a place that stocks and cuts, not just says they can cut anything. So the ant weight bars were a couple of bucks, and then the beetle weight bars were somewhere in the order of $15 to $20. I think on average, the two bars that I got are 15 bucks a piece. So I hope that answers that question. Oh, the next one. The next one is a big one. So what is the best, or in my opinion, the best robot combat TV show? This is hard for me. So I'm going to limit this down to Robot Wars and BattleBots. Of course, there are other TV shows out there. There's King of Bots, there's Clash Bots, there's Robotica, I think, which is the Russian one. There is also now BuggleBots, but I'm going to take all of these and just put them to the side for the moment, mostly because I haven't seen enough of them to form a real opinion of them yet. Obviously, I am watching BuggleBots right now with great interest. It is going really, really well. I like what they're doing over there, but we haven't seen a full season yet, so I can't, well, at least I don't feel comfortable ranking them in amongst the rest of the TV shows until we've seen a whole season and see how everything plays out and all of that. Like I said, really like that so far. If you're not watching BuggleBots, get over there and watch that. There are 3 heats out right now, maybe 4, depending on when this video comes out. Yeah, check the link in the description. BuggleBots is great. But we're going to go back to Robot Wars or BattleBots as my favorite. So this is it's a tough one for me. And I do like both shows, and both shows, I feel like they're different in a way, I guess. So BattleBots is way more like competitive boxing style. It's like the pros, as it were. So it's the place where people throw lots of money at the robot, and it's the way that they talk about the fights and the way they run the fights and the way they judge their fights and all of this kind of stuff. It just feels like a professional sport. And then the Robot Wars one has always been more people focused and geared towards more, yeah, these guys have built combat robots, but they're also like people who tinker in their shed for a living, and this is awesome. And it's more of a ground level, you can get into this, like anybody can do this. This isn't the big leagues, this is shed league in the best way possible, obviously. It's trying to be inclusive to say everybody can build combat robots, and that's something that I really, really like. So I like both of them for their unique takes on the sport and how the sport plays out. And it would honestly be a very neck and neck race here if it wasn't for one thing. Robot Wars was my first introduction to combat robots in any way, shape, or form. When I was really young, I was given Lego for Christmas, and then this same year that I was given Lego for Christmas, a couple of seasons of Robot Wars landed on TV in Australia, and I was hooked. Between those two things, I got into robotics in a very, very big way. I mean, I am an electrical and software engineer now because of those two things. Ever since I saw my Lego robotics set and Robot Wars, that was it. I knew I wanted to work on something robotic for the rest of my life. That's just where I wanted to be. So there's always going to be a soft spot in my heart for Robot Wars and those early years of Robot Wars, where they had Dave Lister from Red Dwarf hosting it, and he was always wearing funny outfits, and yeah, it was just good, and it was my first introduction to this stuff, so it's always going to be my favorite, I think. Not to say that BattleBots or Robot Wars is actually better, but just from a pure nostalgic point of view, Robot Wars is always going to be my favorite here. Oh, okay, this is a good one. So what's the most unique robot you've seen? Now, this is an interesting question because unique in combat robots is a hard thing to put your finger on, mostly because unique is often copied, especially if unique is good. If the unique turns out to be really good, then what you get is people start copying or taking the idea and taking the seed of the idea and taking it in their own direction and building something really awesome as well. So for something to be the most unique, it needs to be something that I would consider to be effective, but also that I have not seen anywhere else. Now, up until very recently, there was one clear contender in this class for me, but there was a video that came out very recently that's kind of muddied the waters a little bit. So on Facebook a little while ago, I think last year sometime, and by last year I mean 2017, because of course I still think it's 2018, but there was a robot that was a swerve drive bristle bot with a giant vertical spinner in the middle of it. And if I can find the footage of it, or at least I can find the Facebook post, I will link it down below. But this thing is incredibly unique. So basically it's a big vertical spinner with a slight wobble in the weapon, and then it has bristle pads in underneath of it that are attached to servos so they can articulate, which means as the weapon spins up and vibrates, they can change which way the robot is moving by changing the direction of the bristle pads, which is insane. That is like a mind-blowing idea, and there is one tiny little clip of it that I've ever found on Facebook of it driving around in somebody's hallway, and I'm just like, what? Who decided that this was a great idea? I mean, massive props to you, but how did that idea come to somebody? I don't get it. So that was going to be my most unique robot ever. However, very recently, Powderdog came out with his new video with his little Triforce dual spinner triangle robot design, and that is pretty unique. I mean, as he said in his video, it is mashing a bunch of different ideas together, but the result of those is something that hasn't been seen before, at least something I haven't seen before. And I think that is one genuine way of getting uniqueness. You can take a multitude of ideas and mash them together in a brand new way and get something that is crazy and unique and very special. So I still think that the Bristlebot just out-uniques Powderdog's new Triforce robot, but oh, that's a close one. So the next question up is, why don't all of you YouTubers who make combat robot videos get together and have a fight? I'd love to. I really would. The problem with that is the logistics would be a nightmare. So of those of us who make combat robot videos consistently, we are spread all over the place. There's a bunch of us in America and a bunch of us in Australia, and I think some people in the UK make semi-consistent videos. The other problem is, how do you define a robotics YouTuber? There are people out there who go to events, they film those events and they put those videos up on YouTube, and that's all they want to do with YouTube. That's all they want to do with their combat robot stuff. There are people like me who do weekly videos on builds and fights and rah, 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 rah. And then there are people like Powderdog who he comes up with interesting ideas, he makes a video, he puts that video out, but his schedule is less rigidly set. He just kind of, when he has an idea, he puts something out. Then you've got people like Robert Cohen, who he is definitely a robotics combat YouTuber, but he also has a lot of other things in his channel. So he has a lot of machining tips and 3D printer tips and all of that kind of stuff. I think all of these people are robotics combat YouTubers, but I'm not sure that all of those people would be interested in going somewhere for a fight, especially if it meant like coming all the way to Australia, where I am, and where Raptor Robotics and ARC and a bunch of others are. So I think that's the biggest problem, is logistics. And then even when you are in the same place, it gets very difficult. So I went over to the States earlier this year, and I knew that Robert Cohen was going to be there. I knew Team Small Robots was going to be there. I knew Team Cerberus was going to be there. And even after knowing all of that and talking to all those guys, we really only managed to do our little podcasty thing like right on the last day as the event was wrapping up. It was just effort, and time, and we're all there to fight robots. We weren't really there to make YouTube videos. We were making YouTube videos on the side and filming our fights and stuff, but our priorities was those robots and getting them together. So I don't know, it's difficult. I would love to be able to do it. If we could find a way to do it, I would be down 100%, but it's difficult. Okay, next one is kind of leading back towards the TV show aspect. So from the robot combat shows, which one is my favorites from each show and which is my favorite overall? So this is a difficult one for me to answer because, like I said, I haven't seen a lot of all of the other shows, but I will just say, as an Australian, and I am a little bit biased in this, anytime an Australian entrant is in a show, especially if I know the people who built it, they are going to get my slot. So Great White over in King of Bots definitely has my shout out, because Steve, who built Great White, is an awesome guy. He fights here in Australia. He runs the Australian competitions. His robot is awesome. It's a very interesting design in terms of how it drives and all of that kind of stuff. Love it to pieces. It did very, very well. This is fighting robots. Of course, Great White was there as well, but this time I'm going to back Redback, who is the robot from Australia as well, which is a shuffler with a lifter and a saw in the middle. That was quite a unique robot because shufflers at 110 kilo weight class are very rare. And it was just a great engineering project. And Mars and Jules, who made that robot, have also got Banana Bender, which is a shuffler in the featherweight class, which I love to pieces as well. So those two have my spots for that. And then Robotica, which is the Russian show. I didn't actually see any of that. Oh no, sorry. Fango is the one from This Is Fighting Robots. Redback is the one from Robotica in Russia, and it's actually also built by Mars and Jules. So they're getting a couple of shout outs here in my my list of favorite robots from TV shows. To be fair though, from Robotica, that is basically the only robot I know. I did watch their fights, but just their fights from Robotica, and I don't really know any of the other competitors there. Then we get to Robot Wars and BattleBots. So BattleBots is a little bit harder for me because I've only really seen the first 3 seasons. Obviously, as a kid, I did hear about Mechadon and Snake, and I do love those designs. So I think old school BattleBots, those are probably my favorite. New school BattleBots is difficult. There is a lot of really cool robots out there. Probably Ringmaster though. I think just because I love ring spinners. I mean, my very first Antweight combat robot was a ring spinner, so it was great to see that at 110 kilo. Robot Wars, old school, I would have to say probably Pussycat. I think from the old school stuff. So the seasons that I saw when I was a kid, Razor was kind of built up to be the big bad champion, and then the season that I saw, Pussycat took Razor down, and I loved the design of Pussycat and the ability to hit with the saw by falling over and imparting more energy than just your typical spinner hit. I thought that was quite ingenious. So yeah, old school Robot Wars, definitely Pussycat. New school Robot Wars, ooh, that's a tough one. Mr. Speed Squared is up there on the list, but its performance kind of left a little bit to be desired, I guess. I do love the engineering that went into Mr. Speed Squared, though. That was quite cool. Probably, though, I would say Pulsar and Magnetar. They're kind of very similar robots, obviously both built by Ellis Ware. And they have helped me formulate my own ideas for something we'll talk about in just a second, because Ellis is great and is very active in the community and puts a lot of stuff out there. His robots have done very well. The look and design of them are really, really cool. I don't think I'm going to build something like them, but I do really like those robots. Okay, does ARC follow the 4-inch rule for ant weights? No, 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 no. This guy is definitely more than 4 inches by 4 inches. And basically none of Australia does. As far as I know, the 4-inch rule is only imposed in the UK, and I think it's basically imposed so that people can't build dustpan robots, because I think they were getting too successful over there and just pushing people down pits all the time, or not fitting in pits. Maybe that's the other one. I think that's the other thing I've heard, is that they don't fit down the pit, which I don't actually think is much of an issue, because these guys are almost too wide for the pits that we have in our arena, but they still go down the pit because they'll end up with one wheel hanging in the pit and one wheel up off, and you can't get anywhere from there. Sure, there are a couple of near misses that you can have when you're wider than the pit, but you can still go down the pit, in quotes, and get yourself immobilized by a pit. So I don't really think it's a big deal. Obviously, the guys in the UK have their rules, we have ours, and yeah, nobody in Australia even fights the 4-inch rule. There's a couple of other clubs starting up here in Australia, and nobody's really doing that. Okay, next one up. So, most common mistake people make with their ant weights. I think there are two, actually. I think starting too complicated with an ant weight is definitely a thing. I did this myself. I tried to build a ring spinner as my very first ant weight. That did not go very well for me, and I really should have built a wedge to start with and driven a wedge around for a little while just to get used to the feel of fighting a robot. And the second thing is servo drive. Why? Why do people do this? N20 gear motors are lighter and faster and more reliable than your standard servo drive. Sure, a servo does have an ESC in it, which I guess cuts down your cost a little bit, but not by that much. On the grand scheme of things, it is worth the extra money to get the ESC and get the N20 gear motors that everybody else uses in combat robots. You have a choice of gear ratios, you have a choice of speeds. It blows my mind when I see people using continuous rotation servos to drive combat robots around. It is really slow, and I don't get it. I think it is a mistake, and that would be probably one of the most common things. Okay, next up, which motor would be good for a 60-pound combat robot with blah, 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 blah. I'm going to stop you there. I haven't built a 60-pound combat robot. The biggest I've built is a 30-pound combat robot, and I can't tell you, realistically. I don't know. My 30-pound combat robot, I was using weapon motors that other people in the community were using. So my advice to you would be to look on Facebook or on any of the forums, look for threads talking about 60-pound robots and see what motors people are using there. That would be the best advice I have for you. That's how I got the motors for my 30-pounder. I was just looking at what other people were using in there. So specifically in this case, Ellis Ware and Neon. I looked at him first, found what he was using, ordered some of those motors, realized that he was running them on 12S, so they're going to be way too slow for me, and found something similar, but slightly different. So that's how I got mine for the 30-pounder. My opinion on pistol grips for weaponized robots. I mean, I guess. The thing is, it's what you personally like fighting with. It needs to be something that you're going to be comfortable with when you're fighting. And this is a big thing for me. I have tried pistol grips, and they're not that intuitive for me. I grew up playing Nintendo, like 64 and Xbox and PS2 and stuff, so thumbsticks are way more intuitive for me than a pistol grip is. And in fact, thumbsticks are so much more intuitive that I can left or right hand my thumbstick without any real worry, whereas a pistol grip, it confuses me. So having to pistol grip and then also change the weapon speed all at the same time would kind of freak me out a little bit, and I probably wouldn't do that. Also, that is one of the big things, is that as you fight more and more and more, you realize that your weapon can't ever just be an on-off switch. You really do need that proportional control, especially with verticals or with angled spinners. Anything where you get gyro forces, you need your proportional control so you can drop your weapon speed to make sharp turns and all of that kind of stuff. So I would not give up my my throttle on either thumb and have to have it on some kind of control knob to use the pistol grip and get a better setup in terms of forwards, backwards, left and right. That is, of course, the advantage of pistol grips, is that you separate your forwards, backwards, left and right, so you can do a pure forwards if you really want to. But like I said, I think the trade-off there is that your weapon control goes down the drain. So if it is for a purely wedge bot and you know how to use a pistol grip controller, go for it. If it is a case of you trying to pick a controller, I'd probably stick with a traditional controller with a thumbstick and a throttle. Okay, next up, I'm going to combine two questions here. So, are you ever going to make larger weight class robots, and am I going to make more featherweights? Maybe and maybe and maybe, basically. So, larger weight class robots, if I can, yes. The problem with that is that once you get past the featherweight class at 30 pounds, the next really viable class is 110 because of like just everything essentially. From what I've been reading and looking at and stuff, once you get past, like once you go up in weight class and move past kind of about 60 pounds, everything starts costing about the same anyway. So I would much prefer to go up into the kind of 110 kilo to 40 pound, whatever that is, all the way up that end, rather than build a 60 pounder or a 120 pounder or something like that. Also, all of these middling classes, like 60 pounders, 120 pounders, all that kind of stuff, are starting to disappear and die off. Like, there's not all that many competitions for them. There's no competitions for them here in Australia. In fact, there is no competitions in Australia for anything larger than 30 pounds. That's just not a thing. So whatever robot I have above a 30 pounder, I'm going to have to fly somewhere to fight with, and if I'm going to go to all that effort, it might as well be 110 kilos, because shipping it from Australia, I can't take it in a suitcase, whatever, so it's going to have to be it's going to be a lot of expense to get it from Australia to somewhere. So I'm going to go straight from 30 pounder all the way to 110 kilos or 240 pounds. Oh man, just weight conversions. Yeah, so the next one will be a heavy. So as I was saying before the camera cut off, yes, my next larger weight class, if it happens, will be a heavyweight. Obviously, I'm going to aim for BattleBots Season 4, and if I get into that, and depending on NDA situations, so non-disclosure agreement situations, there might be some heavyweight content on this channel, there might not be some heavyweight content on this channel, I really don't know. If I don't get into BattleBots, there will probably be some heavyweight content on this channel, because I will start designing and testing weapon systems, and well, actually not weapon systems, drive systems. Weapon systems I'm not testing in Australia at all, because there is nothing here that can contain a 110 kilo weapon. So any weapon that I design would have to be tested in whatever arena it gets fought in for the first time, because I don't feel comfortable spinning up a 110 kilo weapon anywhere here in Australia. So I will be doing some design work, I will be doing some drive testing and things, but like I said, it will all depend on whether I get into BattleBots or not, what the NDA situation is like, and basically, yeah, I can't really say too much more about a potential future heavyweight, because I don't know much more, and I'm going to leave all of my options open in this case, because it is something I've wanted to do for a very, very long time. Next question up, Q&A on Beetleweight parts and all of that kind of stuff. Yes, great idea, and that is its own video. This video is already getting quite long, and I do really want to go through and start doing a few more of the beginners, basics, and all of that kind of stuff, and separate them out by weight class and just talk about some of the things that I have found from fighting in those weight classes and that I've seen on Facebook and Reddit and all of that kind of stuff in each of those weight classes. That will be a future video, hopefully sometime soon. I can't really say for sure. And next up, why did I start building combat robots and fighting and competing? And it goes all the way back to when I was 8 to 10 years old, getting that Lego robotics kit at the same time as seeing Robot Wars on TV, and I just knew that I had to get into something robotics related. Those two things together have kind of pushed me in my direction for my entire life almost. So I am an electrical and software engineer, which I decided to do because I wanted to get into robotics, and those felt like the right way to do that. When I was going through university, there was no such thing as a robotics engineering course, and in fact, when I was going through, mechatronics was only just becoming a thing, so nobody really heard of it, nobody was saying that these degrees were worthwhile, so I did what I knew I was going to love, which is the electrical and the software side of things. So those two things together kind of pushed me in the direction that I've been in, but then more specifically why I got started in this stuff is BattleBots. So BattleBots came back again 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. The first season of the reboot of BattleBots I heard about. Obviously, I keep my fingers in the water and in the pies or whatever those sayings are, and I heard about that and I wanted to get a team together. So I talked to some of my uni friends, we tried to get a team together, we tried to get everything happening and sorted out, but we were separated across all of Australia, basically. It was after uni had finished, everybody had gone home or was working in different places and everything like that. One of the entrance conditions for BattleBots is doing a crew video, and by the time I kind of got to that point in the application process, it was too late to get everybody in to do this video, and basically too many things started to pile on top of each other, and I was like, oh no, it got too much, and I didn't get that application in, unfortunately. But it did lead me to wonder if this stuff was done in Australia at all, and I googled around and I found the Robo Wars Australia forum, and on there I found two guys who had literally just started up ARC. I found Chris and James, who started up ARC. They'd started it up a month or 2 months before I got interested in any of this stuff, and it was just out the back of one of their houses. They had an open air arena that they were fighting flippers and wedges in, and I got really excited. And I decided then and there I was going to keep going, but I was going to go at a lower weight class. I was going to learn some of the skills, learn some of the tricks and tips, and I was going to push myself through to actually doing this and actually building combat robots. And now I've got myself some 13 kilo robots, I've got a bunch of different ant weights, I've got a bunch of different beta weights, and some plans for some heavies on the back burner, which I might have to pull off the back burner very quickly if something gets announced for a BattleBots Season 4. And then just not quite what the question asked, but slightly more specifically why I'm here right now on camera talking to you. That's kind of something that I've been trying to do for a little while, and it kind of has its own little backstory. While I was in uni, I was doing film reviews on a channel that is now long dead and never really got past like 30 subs, and most of those were my friends who still kind of make fun of me for it every now and again. They kind of, little elbow nudgy type, hey, when's the review for this movie coming out type jokes. From there, I actually ran a gameplay channel for a long time, and it was during the gameplay channel that the seed for this all happened. During that gameplay channel, I realized not only did I like the fact that people were watching me and enjoying the stuff that I put out there, but also because there's a schedule to YouTube, or at least if you're doing YouTube the way I do YouTube, there is a schedule to YouTube, and you have to have videos out every single week. I was finding that I was putting the gameplay for the gameplay channel ahead of university work and a lot of other bits and pieces that I was doing, and it was a great motivator. So when I got into combat robots, when I first started, my motivations were every month there was a fight, which meant that the week leading up to the fight, I suddenly went, oh no, my robots aren't done, and I rushed to get them done. So knowing that YouTube would be a good motivator to get me to keep building things and keep testing things and keep doing things week on week, I decided to start this channel up and push out videos every single week to keep myself going and to keep myself engaged. I mean, I am not getting through my backlog in the slightest. My backlog is just growing as I go here. I keep putting out videos, I cross one thing off the list and 2 more things pop up in their place. So there's still so many robots I want to do. And I mean, it's part of being in this community and talking to people and seeing what other people put up online. Like Out Patadog's latest video with his triangle beetle that I've already discussed, that thing has given me like 15 different ideas, and there's just, I wish I had more time to look into some of those things, but for now I'm going to have to hold those off on the back burner, and there's other things that I want to get to earlier than all of that. Anyway, I've kind of taken this whole question off on a bit of a tangent. But yeah, there you go. That was my start in YouTube and why specifically I'm here right now talking to you and not being on camera and building combat robots just for me. So there you go. And then the final question today, can I make a 15-pound bot or a dual vertical blade spinner? It's a maybe and maybe again. So a 15-pound bot, which is I think hobby weights, they are not a thing in Australia at all. They're not, people just don't fight them. There's no arenas for them, there's no nothing for them. So if I was going to do something like that, it would be for a competition in America. I do like going to America. I did love going and competing in AVC in America this year. And a hobby weight is actually a lot easier to transport than a 30-pounder or a featherweight. So it might happen in the future, but considering that it's not something I can use very often, I'm going to have to fly with it to be somewhere, it's more likely that what will happen in the future is I'll go back to the States and I will do a collab with Team Cerberus or Team Small Robots or even maybe Robert Cohen, depending on who's up for it and who's keen, and we'll do a robot build challenge to build a hobby weight or a beta weight or something very American class, and I'll fly over there with some electronics, build a robot to that class specification, and then put it into a competition. Something like that is way more likely for me to build a 15-pound bot than it is for me just to be sitting here in Australia and decide, okay, 15-pound bot, let's make one of those. The dual vertical blade spinner, I love the idea. The issue with using anything two-weaponed is weapon weight. So I wouldn't do it in an ant weight class because there's just not the weight to put 2 weapons on a single ant weight. And yeah, basically the reason you don't see many robots that have 2 weapons is that it's a rob Peter to pay Paul situation. By having 2 weapons on your robot, you're splitting the weight that you have for your weapon into 2 smaller chunks, which means that neither chunk is going to be as efficient as if you put all of that weapon weight together and built one really big weapon. Having said that, there are some advantages to that. So a twin vertical spinning weapon, if you set them right, you should actually be able to counteract the gyroscopic forces of one blade with the other blade, which makes the whole thing drive a lot straighter and turn a lot straighter and, well, turn a lot more controlled, I should say. And things like Chromefly from BattleBots, where it's 2 kind of angled spinners, or Stance Dance Revolution, which is Charles Guan's 45-degree angled, I think it's beetle weights, and he's got 2 blades front and back, which are used to like counteract the gyroscopic forces. They did work, but like I said, they suffer from this weapon weight issue. When you're doing that type of thing, you're suddenly putting a weapon on one weight class that would be more fitting in a lower weight class. So you have to know that the advantage you get from having those 2 weapons as opposed to 1 gives you something. It has to give you an edge. It has to give you an advantage over somebody who's armored for a weapon that is twice as big as the one that you're attempting to hit them with. So whether or not that is, it's useful, I don't know. It's probably one of those things that I'm going to build a beetle weight at some point in the future, or even a featherweight at some point in the future that has 2 spinning weapons, just because I like the idea. It's probably not going to be an effective robot, it will just be a just for fun robot. Speaking of, and also kind of talking about my history and things, Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier in the video, but just in case I haven't, there will be a beta weight at some point this year that is inspired by 8-year-old, 10-year-old me's drawings for a heavyweight combat robot, because I'm very keen for you guys to see this because it's insane. It's just nutty. We're talking about having 2 weapons on a robot. This thing had 4, 4 designed into the robot, and it's. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to fit them all into the chassis, basically, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. Yeah, so I think that's going to end it out here. That is all of the questions that I have written down, so I'm going to end it here. If you made it all the way to the end here, thank you so much for watching and being with me and listening to me ramble about combat robots and YouTube and bits and pieces like that. You're awesome. And I will see you next week for my ARC breakdown for Annie Are You OK for January. That's a lot of 4s in there, but that's what we're at. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video.